today webinar podcast on AI, friend or foe. Yes, absolutely. We're going to talk about the present, the future, what kind of action, what can we take away, what can we do? We're joined today by Dr. Scott Dell. And Dr. Dell is a Navy veteran. He's a Wharton MBA and Doctor of Business Administration. He's got a passion for education and innovation. He is at Ferris State University, professor there. He's a CPA, a coach, experience spanning Big Four accounting firms, including Grant Thornton. He's an entrepreneur. We are talking to small business owners today. It's very important to me as a small business owner that we have some action items for small business owners. He's a sought after speaker who I heard at the MI, the Michigan CPA conference, speaking to over 100 professionals there. And he explores AI's impact on accounting and higher education. He's written books on that subject. I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Scott.
Mike, thank you very much. Honored to be here. Appreciate you and the audience for being here. AI is changing, not every month, not every week, not every day, but every hour. Even this morning, there were some changes I'll talk about in a little bit. Powerful tool, can do amazing things. There's a cartoon here. I just want to introduce it to you. You can read it as well as I do. What's the impact? We don't know for sure, but it's going to do a whole things. What it says is made up, that hallucination idea. Or is it going to take away jobs? Sure. But might it create jobs? Security risks, cybersecurity, personal identifiable information, crucial. Could it damage our reputation, or can we insure against it? All we know is you got to get it, you got to use it, you got to do it. So on the next slide, this actually goes into a little bit more detail to describe some of the concerns. So I don't want to start off on a negative note, but I want to start off on an awareness note. So be aware that it can and does hallucinate. It makes stuff up. It is not always right, although it's getting better and better. Sam Altman, founder of OpenAI, said AI is right now as bad as it's ever going to be. And I can say that statement every week, and it's improving all the time, and it's as bad as it's going to be. It used to get between a 46 and a 50% on some of my exams. Now it gets an 80 to 90% of my exams. It can now pass the bar, pass the CPA exam, pass all kinds of things. It's getting pretty smart. So we got to be careful and aware, but it sounds so convincing. It tells you things that sometimes you want to hear and you want to agree with. I've given it some entrepreneurial ideas that are lousy. Vinegar mouthwash, let's make it work. And AI says, terrific idea. There's a market for that. And it's like, really? Come on, get real. Let's get some common sense, which AI may not have much of at this point. Will eliminate jobs? Sure. But it's best as a partner. It can augment. I often say it will 10x what you can do as a professional, as an entrepreneur, as a knowledgeable person in your field. It'll 2x or 3x what you can do as a novice, as a student, but you can't see through those hallucinations. I mentioned PII before, and PHI is personal health information. Never, never, ever put it in there. Although you can put boundaries, you can put guardrails, you can have internal AI that doesn't go outside those bounds. So there's a balance. Sometimes you can go past that if you need to. Bad PR, hey, they'll sue you, not OpenAI or Gemini, Google folks. Ain't slowing down. And as I mentioned earlier, it can 10x what you can do as a professional, maybe 2x or 3x what you can do. On the next slide, you'll see there's a little cartoon. You might have heard the quote something like, AI is not going to take your job, but someone who knows AI just might. Well, frankly, I have modified that. I used to believe that, but I now have a slides when I present formally. I put a red circle with a slash. It will take your job. But on the other hand, it will, as I said, best augment what you do. So the capabilities of AI are uber powerful and do some amazing things, especially when you partner with it.
And Dr. Scott, I think this right here speaks to the march of technology, right? And I tell our firm, and we're focusing on automation this year. AI is the rage, but automation is the key. And the horse was eventually replaced by the tractor and the car. And we've done that in business for the last 100 years, is tools and technology improve the automation. And this buzzword AI is the buzzword, but could we just somehow use technology to automate? And the latest way to do this is this thing called AI, right?
I would agree wholeheartedly. You're right on track. Now, the other, you probably have heard the famous Ford quote. If people asked, if people were asked what they wanted, they would have said faster horses.
Yeah.
And AI is a new animal. So the cars have basically replaced horses, tractors replaced a lot of the manual labor. But when you look at the role of technology, as you were mentioning, it is enhancing what we can do, but it's a new paradigm. It's a new thought process. We need to not just take AI and apply it to old models, old systems, old activities. We need to want to take advantage of what AI can do above and beyond. Our competitors are using it, our customers and clients are using it, our employees are using it, and we need to use it, not just to keep up, but to progress and accelerate. Your thoughts?
No, I agree. Well, paradigm is a good point. I mean, on the one hand, I say technology marches on. This is nothing more than the march of technology. But you're saying it's a little bit more than that, Mike. Well, let's expand on that. I'm interested to hear that.
Yeah, and the good old days that were replacing the farmers, the blue collar workers, and that was the technology, the Luddites and the whole idea of the industrial revolutions. Now it's white collar workers, thought workers, folks that are doing all kinds of jobs. And you probably heard of the World Economic Forum and the guys in Davos most recently, this past week. Um, what are the tools that what are the needs of the future? And I've got kids and grandkids, and we want to advise them well. It used to be you tell them computer programming, great, computer science, cool. They can't find jobs now. All right. And frankly, with college graduates having a harder time finding jobs than high school graduates right now, and that'll be bouncing around for a bit. It's a challenge. But there's opportunities and needs, and where do you go? Well, the top two items here, analytical thinking and critical thinking, are the needs, are the direction, are the things that you want to be able to do. When it predicted 40% of worker skills will be disrupted by 2027. Okay. We got another report from World Economic Forum. They actually have some pretty decent reports, but they're throwing darts. Do they know? No. I'll share National Association of Colleges Employers. Top three things they often rate: critical thinking, creativity, and communication. Add to that curiosity, like on the four C's. Those are the things in this day and age you need to have, you need to do to succeed in any business, in any job, and in any opportunities. So analytical thinking, critical thinking, AI and big data was number three on the pecking order. You get down to 7, tech literacy, um, number 8, design, user experience, motivation, self-awareness. The four C's is the emphasis. And the social interaction, that's one of the things that colleges really need to be aware of and are good at. They're generating that college experience. They're not marking that enough. A lot of my students are saying, I'd rather take a course online. I can get through it quicker. I don't have to come to class. I don't have to interact with other students or the teacher. I'm sorry, you're losing 70% of the benefit of coming for a college education. Not to say that online learning isn't powerful, and there are tools, the edX, the Coursera's, all schools are offering online courses, but technology is to be integrated to augment what we do. I'm in virtual labor class this semester. I'm using Notebook LM, I'm using Gemini, using ChatGPT. I've got something called Hux, HUXE. If you want to Google that, that's a pretty cool tool that goes through my emails and calendars and does some things automatically. The
This
idea of using the technology, integrating the technology, and keeping up with the technology is a true art. Go
It's
ahead.
really fascinating that, we talk about get a STEM degree, right? Get a very technical, specialized STEM degree. But you're saying, on the other hand, let's not lose those fine arts skills. So they're coming together in many ways.
I mean, we're starting a Toastmasters chapter at Ferris State. I did it at a previous institution in Wisconsin. Why? It's communication skills, it's leadership skills. And when you start looking and saying, okay, frankly, I teach accounting. I'm a fan of accounting. It's a foundation. If you don't know accounting, you're stuck in business and not going to progress very far. And even if you can hire somebody, you still need to understand it. But the catch is, I used to recommend, say, accounting and finance, great double major. Then I switched over to accounting and computer science. Those are great double major because were taking over. Then I went to a computer and data analytics. I mean, accounting and data analytics. And I actually took 2 data analytics master's level classes last spring. I'm trying to keep up as well. I got the doctorate in 2019, fairly newly minted doctor, but you got to keep current. Now, as of about the past 8 to 10 months, I'm recommending accounting and either English or theater. What do you mean? What does that have to do? What's the liberal arts have to do? Well, do you remember one of the C's was creativity? One of the C's was curiosity. Those are things that we need to stimulate in ourselves, and it's evolving into storytelling. Even as a financial professional, you go in the door, you're not ticking and tying, you're not doing the debits and credits and the bookkeeping. What you're really doing is making business decisions. You're in the C-suite. You're talking about, okay, do we acquire? Do we add another shift? Are we growing? Well, here's a new product line. Let's evaluate. Let's figure this out. But it turns into storytelling. And sales is storytelling, as you know. You're telling a story of what we can do to help you and what you need that's going to be to take away the headache, take away the pain. So those are opportunities as a small business entrepreneur you have to get to go into. Now, this is kind of an interesting, back to World Economic Forum. As I said, they're throwing darts, but they had in 2020, 2023, and 2025, 3 different projections. One saying 85 million jobs because of AI to be eliminated, 87 to be created. Okay, that's a net gain. That's okay. And they say 83 million jobs to be eliminated. And then number to create it was 69. That's not so good. Net loss. But look at this big jump. 92 million jobs to be eliminated, 170 million to be created. Now, again, they're throwing darts. They don't know. And it's just a projection. And futurists kind of follow the trends, and the trends sometimes go in funky directions. But we don't know. What we do know, change is in the air. We do know it's evolving in terms of what the job opportunities are, where we're going with them, and what we're doing with them. So let's take a look.
This notebook LM is interesting. I heard you present on this and really looked into it further when you spoke at the Michigan CPA forum. And talk a little bit about Notebook LMs, please.
Notebook LM is friggin' amazing. It would create a 2-person podcast that you can't tell it's AI. But one of the nice things, it's made by Google. It's based on the latest models. It actually can create a PowerPoint style presentation. It can actually create a mind map. It can actually do deep reasoning within the model. But what's nice is you can pop in maybe 10, 15, 20 PDFs, URLs, YouTube videos, any documents you have, and say, generate a podcast. I'm driving, I got a 15-minute commute when I drive into Ferris daily. And I mentioned something called Hux. 2 guys from alums from Google's Notebook LM about 2-3 years ago created this product. And it's a 2-person podcast, the same idea, that goes through my emails. It says, oh, yeah, sit back, it's cold outside. You're going to want to sit back and correct papers indoors today with a cup of coffee. But you might want to look at these newsletters that came on your radar. Or you got an important message regarding a meeting with Mike coming up, and you want to make sure you're aware that that's coming up at 10. Those are things that will be reminded. And a Notebook LM is doing this from the documents you submit. So if you say, well, I've got my URL for my website, I've got 2 or 3 product launch descriptions, maybe I have a business plan, maybe I have some marketing materials, you throw it all in Notebook LM. And then you say, by the way, what's the score of the Detroit Lions game? If you're in Gemini or ChatGPT, it'll give you a score. Now, no guarantees it's right. But if you're in Notebook LM, it says, I don't have that data. It's a captive audience. I'm only going to use the data you supply, much less in the way of hallucinations. And it is very focused on the kind of things you do. I'm using it in the classroom all the time. Matter of fact, a week and a half ago when I demonstrated in the classroom, one of my students literally the next class said, yeah, I used this in my class yesterday. It was Tuesday class. This was Thursday. On Wednesday, I was using this in another class. This is great because I'm working out, I'm walking or whatever I'm doing. I'm able to listen to the content. It's a
Yeah,
learning tool.
so yeah, in your live demo, which we don't have time to get into right here, but you're saying it'll take all that information you dump into it, and then you played a
Synthesize.
podcast. Yeah, synthesized a voice, and it's a podcast conversation about that content. It's mind-numbing.
And by the way, if you want to really have an intro to yourself to put on your website, it will intro you as the star of the show. You can put your LinkedIn profile in there. You can put in some background information, a resume or a CV, and you say, tell me about, oh, this guy Mike is cool. You know what he's done? And it has the okays, the ums, which Toastmasters hate, but it has a very natural style that, again, if you want to boost your ego sometime, pop your information in Notebook LM, let it generate podcast, and you're flying high for the day.
That's great.
Now, what does AI do? How does it work? And by the way, these are obviously pictures generated in AI. I don't have any intellectual property concerns that someone else is going to have to really go after it. But I use the puppy dog effect. Eager to please. It'll say certainly. As I mentioned that before, the lousy entrepreneurial ideas, it says, oh, great idea. That's cool. Yeah, you run with that. Yeah, people are going to love this idea. But it's wrong. So you have to prompt against that. It's a little overzealous sometimes. So it's like your dog, eager to please. I was driving by a church in Wisconsin, and I saw on the sign it said, I wish I was half the man my dog thinks I am. And I'm saying, perfect. I'm a dog guy. We had two dogs. And, you come home, they're in the moment, and they love you for who you are, and they want your attention. But AI can be like that. So you got to be careful and prompt against that. I was at a conference out in Dallas, and actually, while I was listening, someone mentioned the term overcaffeinated intern. I really like that analogy. And I said, look, give me a picture. And by the way, one of these is a Google Gemini picture, one of these is an OpenAI Chat GPT picture. But the idea, and I tried both for both, and one gave me better for each. So it's not like one is the best for everything. You use a couple of models when you do some of these things. But the overcaffeinated intern, it works hard. A lot of entry-level jobs are being replaced. That first rung of the ladder is a challenge to get to. A lot of the big four CPA firms are saying we're cutting hiring. A lot of major companies are saying we're reducing entry-level opportunities, but there's more coming on those that are in place right now existing. Doesn't ask for raises. It'll work 24/7. Doesn't take vacations. No visits to the doctor. Tireless and afraid to ask for a raise. It never asks for a raise. As a matter of fact, the cost of this stuff keeps going down and going down. So it is a lot of power in a package, eager to please and tireless. But how does it really work? Let's briefly talk about that to help understand it. AI is not a spreadsheet. It's a lousy number cruncher, actually. It makes a lot of math mistakes, especially the earlier versions. It's probabilistic, which means, it takes a word. It's like a game of telephone. You say, hi, here's a message, pass it on. By the time it's the third person, it's garbled. By the time it's the 10th person, it doesn't even recognize it. You might have kids, you might have done it yourself, played a game of telephone. So it probabilistically says, what's the next word? Chicken Little was right. The sky is, and you're probably going to say falling, but you could say blue, you could say stormy, you could say cloudy. 95% chance it's falling. And with that, there are opportunities to go off track. So that's where the hallucinations come in. Deterministic is, here's my spreadsheet, here's my answer, here's 2 plus 2, give me a 4, and we're good to go. So deterministic is ideal, but in AI world, it's probabilistic because it's a word generator generating the next word. Continue. The Gartner hype cycle. All right. I'm thinking many of you might have seen something like this, but you get a tech trigger and it's part of a life cycle type chart as well. You get that trigger in the beginning, and then it accelerates and says it's changing the world, which it will. It is. It does. It's changing life. I always know what AI is. But again, the peak of inflated expectations. Oh, next week we're going to fire half our staff, or fire all our support people, or we have technical support, or our interaction, we don't need a marketing department because it's going to do all the marketing for us. Inflate expectations is where it goes. Then it drops down. Wait a minute. It's not so good anymore. Well, we got to hire back some of those people we fired or let go if we can get them. Okay, there's down to disillusionment. Then slope of enlightenment saying, wait a minute, here's what it's good at. Here's what it's not good at. Let's get it to a level of productivity. So that's the plateau of productivity. And that's the evolution when we talk about many technologies.
Yeah, and Doctor, you said it, others have said it, but new technology is often overhyped in the beginning, but underestimated in the long run. I actually bought the first business in 2001. 2001 was the internet crash, right? Huge investment into internet technology and companies and connectivity, and then the bust came.
Dot-com bust. Yeah.
Talk about cloud computing, all the rage, everything's cloud. Yeah, it is. Everything's cloud and a little bit overrated, but definitely heating up right now. And now we're in this phase of AI, overhyped, but you're saying, hang on, the productivity is going to start showing up.
Big time. Yeah, there was a book by Bill Gates back in the late 90s. And one of the quotes was that we tend to overestimate what will happen with technology in the next 2 years and us underestimate the next 10.
Yes.
And often my presentations, I'll say we tend to overestimate the next 6 months and underestimate in the next 2 years. So we have these huge expectations when the technology is released. But that's one thing about AI. Everything is accelerating. The speed of change is exponential, not linear. And the pie is growing. We're not talking about a fixed pie or a fixed mindset. We're talking about a growth mindset and lots of opportunities. Does that mean everybody's going to be on a 10-hour work week? Or no work week at all, and this universal basic income, a universal high income, UBI, UHI stuff is going to come around. Capitalism is changing as we know it, and I'm an avowed capitalist. You wouldn't catch me talking about UBI 10 years ago, but you know what? That's in the conversation right now, and something to be of consideration, something we need to think about or at least talk about and get it into the conversation. So when we look at trends, what are we talking about? Multimodal. We're going to have voice interaction. I'm a Star Trek fan. I'm a Trekkie. The voice is, hey, computer, tell me about any ideas on. And you can now have a conversation. Even the free version of ChatGPT, you can click and you got a free conversation. Even a translator. My wife is from Dominican Republic, native tongue Spanish. Sometimes at family gathering, I'll say, I'm going to speak English. My compadre here is going to be speaking Spanish. Translate everything in English I say into Spanish. Translate everything into Spanish they say into English. Bang. And we have a conversation. And there might be a slight delay when it says, blah, 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 and it goes into the Spanish. I don't speak Spanish. My French is actually better. My Hebrew is even better than that. But my Spanish, that's my wife's department. So, but having just a translator on ChatGPT at that level. I have a Norwegian student, and we did that same thing in class. Literally, I Norwegian. Didn't know it could speak Norwegian, but it can. It did, and I had a conversation with my student live in class in Norwegian and English, going back and forth. Then we look at the agentic, and you've been hearing everything about agents. I was in an all-day class on Monday, which I was supposed to be on Tuesday, but I couldn't do 2 days dedicated. I got dedicated one, and they're recording the second day, so I'm going through this weekend to follow up. Keeping up is definitely a challenge with some of the stuff. But agents is the ability of AI to be assigned tasks like an intern. Go ahead and do this. Now, an intern, you expect a certain level of knowledge, but you also don't expect them to do A-class work out of the gate. And you have to give them, sometimes interns take a lot more work for support. And that AI needs that context, that information, those things communicated so it can be effective in what it does. So the more information you can give it, the better off you're going to be. So agentic AI, and just the term I heard this week is an agent swarm. There's a Chinese model called Kimi. that just came out, and they're introducing the term, I can put 100 agents on this activity. Think about that. If I could have 1,000 Nobel laureates in the next room and say, here's a problem, or 1,000 VCs, venture capitalists, top of their game, reviewing things. Boston Consulting Group, the Bain, any of the high-end consulting firms, which are actually going to be very challenged because the models can do so much more. The idea is you've got the smartest people in the room. IQ right now is in a range of 120 to 160 for these AI models. What do you think will happen when AI gets to 500? IQ gets to 500, 1,000, 2,000. Are we talking Skynet? Maybe. Or are we talking the ultra super assistant that we can work together with to cure diseases, to take care of things that need to be done and major issues? I'll complement the frontier models from LLMs, and about half of those are Chinese. I just mentioned Kimi. And now, frankly, I have a fear of most Chinese models, but they're open source, which means anybody can use them, access them, and download them, as opposed to the proprietary models like the Geminis, like the ChatGPTs. Llama, out of our Facebook friends, out of Meta, has an open source version as well. But open source means anybody can access, and that's their competitive model. Once somebody else jumps ship or jumps to a new level, everybody else can catch up real quick because these are all open source. Everybody's using it. Everybody has access. But China is not far behind, and in some areas is actually ahead of the U.S. But there you'll see Lashat is also a French model on there. There's a Saudi Arabian model. There are a lot of, say, sovereign models that are evolving, and there's a competitive advantage. We're on our way to AGI, artificial general intelligence, and ASI, artificial superintelligence. We're getting to the point where you can say, here's the problem, go fix it. Or with ASI, you're going to say, hey, I just found a lump in my lung. Come up with a medication that's going to help that's going to inhibit it. Then recommend surgical activity if need be. Come up with a program, a plan, and it's going to come up with all this by itself, just going back and forth and saying, yep, found the solution, pop this pill, you're on your way. That's the ultimate dream. So there are so many models out there of what they can do and where they're going, to be aware. This one is interesting. Entry level, 98% of companies expect candidates to have ChatGPT or AI experience in general for entry level positions. Now, there are some studies out of London and out of the US. You put AI on your resume out of high school, you get a pay bump and more interviews. You do the same thing in college, some kind of certification, some kind of recognition. It doesn't even have to say I got certified. I'm using it for this. You have a mention of artificial intelligence, you are a better chance of getting that interview. Now, this is really scaring HR folks because the services where you have the students, applicants, now you get hundreds, if not thousands of applications, which you had before, but you could sift through the resumes because some weren't pretty good, some didn't have a match. The ATS, the applicant tracking system, though, right now is going through and saying, great, here are the keywords, they have that, they pass it on. AI is helping people make resumes that are spotless, cover letters that are terrific. And then the person gets into an interview, they don't make eye contact. They can't speak so well. They can't communicate so well because AI did the job for them, and that's not really who they are. So that's creating challenges in the HR space, in the human resource space. I have a book called Living a Dream Career and a course as well, and a book on AI, ChatGPT, and AI for Accountants, Practitioner's Guide. The stuff is changing, as I say, on the hour, every hour. Let's do a brief chat about. Go ahead.
I'll interrupt a moment. Yeah, we're coming down the home stretch here. We'll try and wrap this in the next 5 minutes with our recommendations. And then we'll have 10 minutes for Q&A. If you have questions, put them in the chat, and we'll get to that. We'll try and wrap this up in the next 5-6 minutes. Go ahead, Doctor.
Fair enough. Naguib Mahfouz, Egyptian Nobel laureate from the 70s. You can tell whether a man is clever by his answers. You can tell whether a man is wise by his questions. And a little bit sexist, but it is about questioning, the art of questioning. The art of success is the prompt. And that prompt engineering, which was even 3 years ago, was a $300,000 a year job. Prompt engineering is interacting with these language models in a way that says, oh, how do I ask a question? Hi, AI, give me a resume. It'll give you a resume just like that. And it'll suck because it won't know you. It won't have any knowledge of your experience, your background, your skills. If you take a resume and say, here's my current resume. And by the way, here's the job description I'm applying for. Can you tidy up my resume to be a better match? Now you got context. Now you just gave it a whole bunch of information that is very useful that it can use. I've asked it, I needed the board of directors for a major publicly traded company. I said, give me the names of the board of directors for a major publicly traded company. 30, 40,000 employees, global presence. It gave me 9 names. Not one of them was correct. Not one of them was a board member. So it made stuff up. It'll give you what you ask. Give me 25 books. I'll give you 25 books. I may make up some titles, make up some authors. Last time I did that, I got about 21 good books and 24 that were made up. And you have to go in and screen and audit and validate what's real and what's not. So it'll give you what you asked for. But if you're able to prompt effectively, you won't get that hallucinations, or you won't get those hallucinations that say, oh, here's 25 books. But you might say, validate these, make sure they're real books with real authors, and the content I'm looking for is specific. How you prompt is a high need to develop that skill. And I've developed 2 methodologies for prompting, and I do seminars and webinars as well as workshops. The idea of STAR in the interview space: situation, task, action, result. That's how you answer a question that's geared towards, well, how'd you react to something? How did you accomplish something, or how did you do something? Give me a time when this happened. Experiential side. What the R is the role in the front, and the CQ. I'll give you a power tip right now when you're doing prompting in AI. At the end, say, ask it a question. By the way, what else do you need to know that's going to help you answer this question? And it will come back to you and say, oh, by the way, if you can tell me more about this, that. I gave it a health issue. I had a torn lateral meniscus. I went back and I said, you know what? What else do you need to know to help develop a physical therapy plan for him? I'm going to see a physical therapist in a week. Can you help me out here? And it came back and said, well, what's your age? Any other conditions? Oh, what's your diet like? It asked me a bunch of questions that helped it give a better answer. And then I presented it to my physical therapist, and he said, 90%, that's right on the money. I said, are you worried about your job? He said, no. I said, do you mind if I show this both, first of all, to my other PTs on the clinic? And then he said, this is actually more helpful. And I said, you know what? When I read through that, half the exercise I didn't recognize, I didn't know, and I don't know what condition I'm really in. So you're right on. I think it's a tool that's useful. But it complements. 10x is what he does. 2x or 3x may be what I can do.
Yeah, so to summarize that, if prompting is the key to AI, you have, be good at prompting, make big money prompting. Well, basically,
let me make a point on that. Now, prompting is right now where it's at in terms of being effectively able to utilize. Where it's going is in the applications. Okay, Salesforce has Agentforce. QuickBooks has AI built in. NetSuite has AI built in. Microsoft Office has AI built in. Copilot, they call it. All these tools, more and more people are going to be using AI through an application, not through a large language model with a prompt. If you can prompt, you're golden. But the tools are being integrated across platforms in a variety of areas.
Yeah, and I was just going to say that asking AI itself to help you prompt for a specific situation helps you improve your prompting as part of what you were saying. So that,
and by the way,
prompting. Go ahead.
To complement what you're saying, when I asked for a picture, those 2 pictures that you saw, the caffeinated intern, I didn't say, give me a picture of a caffeinated intern. I asked it for a visual prompt and saying, I'm trying to come up with a picture of a caffeinated intern, someone who's really going after, that's excited and trying to get some work done. give me a prompt. It gave me a 3-paragraph prompt that would have taken me a half hour to figure out. And then I plugged that 3-paragraph prompt both into ChatGPT and to Gemini generated pictures. So you can use this tool to generate prompts for images, pictures, videos, presentations, and other kind of things. So this prompting is really an art, but you're right, asking the question to have AI help you do what you want to do.
Yeah. So action or answer items here as we wrap up is prompting, number one. Number two is security. As you implement AI in your small business, security is paramount. We just don't want it reaching into the wrong information and dumping it on the web. So security is key. Shadow IT is happening at your company. People are using AI in different ways. Do you know how they're using it? Secondly would
Shadow
be,
IT is, you bring up a good point about shadow IT. This thing right here, your employees are using it even if you prohibit it. I can't go in a classroom and say, you can't use IT, you can't use AI in my class. You know what? They're using it. I need to deal with it. I need to teach differently. I need to enhance what I do, give value add for them, as well as make them think through more and enhance the communication, more interaction in classes. I can't just say prohibit it. Banks can't do that. They try. Samsung did that at one time, saying you can't use it. Apple tried to prohibit it. All these companies are saying prohibit use. Wait a minute. Now governments can do that. Russia can say you can't use it. China, North Korea might be able to say you can't use it. And then maybe you can, maybe you can't.
yeah, for sure. And then for small business, as you move to application or agentic, which you mentioned earlier, that would be your line of business software, your ERP, DRP, professional services automation software. When that solution comes out that integrates and add values, that's going to be big value. And then number 3 or 4, return on investment cost is real. I mean, for i3 to buy Copilot for everybody in the company, and then half the company doesn't use it. Well, let's look at that return on investment. So there's ways to find tools that offer multiple AI platforms and will give you a report on who's using that tool. So these are some of the action items you can move forward with. Security, let's watch the security. Anything you implement, do some work there. Agentic AI, talk to your application vendors. Do you have anything that improves automation? And number 3, look at the cost of it. There are different ways to implement and get a return on investment. This one I thought was interesting from you, Doctor.
Yeah, let me mention about agentic AI. It doesn't necessarily have to come from your vendors. I mean, there's the people might have heard of N8M or Mind Studio or Relevance. Those are all great tools. You can actually, as long as you have some in-house gurus or an outside firm like yours that can come in and assist, those are tools that you can bring to bear. You don't have to wait for Intuit or QuickBooks to do it. You don't have to wait for any of the major vendors that are providing Salesforce to do it. You can
Good
bring
point.
those ideas. And this is one of those third-party opportunities. Square, they just came out with a restaurant system, voice ordering, calls, conversation. I'm working with a company in Egypt that actually is doing something similar. In Egypt, they want to bring it to the States. And then we were talking about this back. I discovered this back in October and said, and they've introduced it as of January 1. I said, by the way, did you hear about this? Square's doing it. And there's then a dozen other vendors that are doing it too, different price points. But if you got somebody like Square, there's so many Square terminals in a lot of these restaurants right now. They're foot in the door and now they're kicking it down. So there's needs. Now you mentioned also the cost and Copilot and those ideas. Now, not only people, I get the question, should I spend $20 a month on Gemini or ChatGPT? And my answer usually is if you're using it more than 3 or 4 times a week, definitely. You get more capacity, you get the latest and greatest, you get the ability to use the newer models. But there's something called ChatGPT Go, which is now $8 a month. They just incorporated where it incorporates advertising. And I say it's changing every hour. This morning, Gemini introduced a competitor to that for $8 a month. That's giving you their latest Gemini model. You look at this, and it literally is changing by the hour. And so there, that new price point's $8, even though it's $20. I'm still on the 20 plan. I'm not on the 200 plan. So 20 is good for what I want. But I think that's a good level to be at. And I don't care for the ads. Although this Gemini, I subscribe to Gemini too for 20. What the idea is $8. That's not, it's a pretty good deal, especially if Gemini is actually overtaking ChatGPT in some areas. ChatGPT is dominant. Anthropic's Claude, they just came out with Co-work, which is amazing, but it's only in their $100 plan. It's not in their 20 plan or their free plan. So you got to be aware of some of these things, and it does change so fast. But you're right. These tools are evolving. A lot of companies are doing cool things.
All right, as we wrap up, we'll go to Q&A. Jody, we're a little bit long here, but contact information for Dr. Scott and our mandate. Well, prompts, security, look for agentic specific application benefiting AI agents, and then return on investment. There's different ways to get there than just writing a check for $20 or $30 per employee. Any questions, Jody?
Yes, we have one question from Mike S. Using AI to automatically go through emails and or meetings, how do you protect the PII that may already be present?
I love that question because you're right. Personal identifiable information, keeping it secure can be a challenge. So you can, when on some of these enterprise subscriptions in your company, have it narrow enough that says you can't go outside. You're not going to let this data out. You're not going to use it for training. Now, the paid versions of these large language models, you can say, delete after 30 days my prompts, delete after 30 days my data. Now, do you trust OpenAI and Google to really delete those things? And I tend to be a little more trusting than I should. I think Mike's going to be a little less trusting, and I appreciate the balance. But the idea is, you're right, it's of concern. Because think about it. If the CEO of Samsung went in and said, "Hey, here's my strategic plan for next year. Can you just tidy it up? I'm presenting to the board, and I want it to be in a tone that's really aggressive, positive, but add a couple of jokes." And then I go out, Scott Dell here in Big Rapids, Michigan. If Samsung had a strategic plan, what would it be like? And it gives me Samsung's strategic plan from their CEO because he just used it in the model without any boundaries. That's a problem. But if he had the guardrails and they had the enterprise version or an internal version only that wouldn't go outside, I wouldn't have access to that. So yes, you can control some of that. And in the paid version of ChatGPT, you can flag it to say, nope, don't use this for training. And that does help. So that's a big concern.
And then from an
Good.
enterprise standpoint, if you're running Microsoft 365 or Google Suite, Business Suite, we can help with that. We can help make sure that you're boxed in and secured, and employees aren't finding proprietary information, and certainly that data is not leaking out to the web.
And I'd love to connect on LinkedIn. Anybody who might want to. I wrote a book on LinkedIn a few years back as well, but I'm a LinkedIn aficionado. So happy to connect and honored to be reached out. And I'm at Ferris, so I'm in town. Easy access. Other questions?
That's all.
What are you seeing, Doctor, in the last 60 seconds here because you're a CPA, you work closely in the accounting field. Are you seeing any application within accounting or that field?
Definitely, yes. From the big four, they're all putting billions into this and having these internal models. From the smaller practitioners to local firms, they're starting with marketing, email, augmenting what they do. When it quotes tax code or quotes audit rules or quotes, it can do things, but you got to check it as an expert. You can 10x it. But the last comment is you can actually put in financial information and have it do analysis. It can create dashboards. It can program things. It can do Excel better than any accountant or any Excel guru can do. So it can now play chess better, play Go better, and use Excel better. But if you still in Excel and just want to create some macros and let it do some formulas for you, you can do that. Create some graphs and charts, let it do that. It can do all kinds of analysis for you, with you, and comparatives with you. Again, careful, take out company names, take out any identifiable information, but you can pop in all kinds of balance sheets, income statements, projections, and access to change things. You know what? I had to do an analysis, and I said, I was working on a spreadsheet, and I was trying to strip this down. I've got 5,000 records. Give me this criteria. When I did it manually in 45 minutes, came up with about 600 records that were appropriate. When I let AI do it, in about 3 minutes, it came up with 603 records. I missed 3 of those records. AI was right. So careful.
Thank you so much to Dr. Scott Dell and to Mike Ritzma for joining us today, and hope that you will come back and visit us again for our next webinar. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a good day.